Research, for which I cover two jobs. First of all for TV in Europe, and secondly I cover TV Electronics Research worldwide. What I'm going to talk about today really is something that I think is on the tip of everybody's tongues at the moment, and thank you very much to Jürgen Boyne from GfK this morning, who articulated it very clearly about smart TV being one of the biggest opportunities in the business. And really what I'd like to do is track the development of smart TV and offer a little bit about what we as DisplaySearch think is going to happen and where the development lies in smart TV. Smart is somewhat of an overused term. At the airport I noticed that I could even buy smart water. And hopefully what I will try to do is explain a little bit about what we think is truly smart and where truly smart goes in the future. But first of all, being from DisplaySearch, I know that everybody from the press is very familiar with us because we like to burn people in bar chart hell. So here goes. It wouldn't be right if we didn't talk a little bit about the TV market in general. And our view of the TV market is that we're at the end of three very difficult years, 2011, 2012, in which the market has been basically flat. However, within that story of the market being flat, why the market stays like that has been because growth has switched between countries and regions. And we see that going ahead into the next couple of years. So where we're at now is that after a huge surge in TV sales in Japan in the last couple of years, that the developed world is really settling down and that growth is relatively static. Analog switch off is over in almost every part of the developed world, and incentive programs have ended, and the magic of flat TV just as a category on its own has somewhat worn off. So what we expect now is that the growth will move to emerging regions. They've had in general a bit of a pause, and I think this is because consumers sense that their next TV will be a flat TV, and a small number of them delay. If you look at what's going on by technology, then if you read a lot of the technical PR and to a certain amount of press coverage, then you would believe that the TV market is just about to undergo a revolution and that there will be OLED everywhere in the next 2 or 3 years. We really do not believe that that will happen. OLED remains very, very immature in terms of the process technology, in terms of the reliability of manufacturing. It is still very much a science project. And in my job as an analyst to spread around misery, then we think that only about 50,000 OLED TVs will ship this year. So it's a very small quantity. And even our more aggressive forecasts suggest only 5 million OLED TVs will ship in 2015. And our expectation on products like 4K, 2K are equally pessimistic. So the growth and the support of the value has to come from things other than swapping the technology. It has to come from actually what the TV is for and what people do with the TV and how they use it and how they interact with it. There is no magic fix. And while the brands are looking towards the future in terms of switching technology, for the next 3 or 4 years, then it has to be about something else. So, where will that value come from? And this is really what I'd like to talk about in my presentation today. I'm trying to be brief and make sure that there's room for 5 minutes of questions at the end, knowing that I'm competing against coffee and doubtless cakes and a great view. So what we really see is that this value comes from changing what the TV's for. And you can generally call that connected TV, and for consumers it's about getting content from places other than down the antenna from your satellite or terrestrial or from your cable provider, but instead from the internet. And we see that the connected TV is really exploding into three very different categories of product from the single kind of thing that we've had in the last couple of years. And at the very bottom, then there are very basic services. And this is a good example. This is an HBB TV screen. And what you see is something that comes from broadcasters. It's very much like conventional TV. As you can see, it has fast text buttons on it, a little bit of extra content. And if you like, it's 21st century teletext. It's teletext with moving pictures. And it comes from a broadcaster, so it's going to be very, very high quality, very high production values. But because it comes from a single broadcaster, you compromise on the level of choice involved. But as a consumer, the behavior change is small. Okay, my mum, who is 79 years old, can use this. She feels quite comfortable. It's just like using teletext. In the middle of the market, then, we have things which are pretty much like what you have on connected TVs today, and there'll be more of it, and the choice will get more and more. And these are services provided by the TV brand. So they come from a portal from that set maker, and of course all brands are different, so the choice and quality of those apps will depend on the brand. As a consumer, though, the thing is rather more complicated, and you're beginning to get a real feeling when you use one of these TVs that either you're in watch TV mode or you're in interactive apps mode, and that there's something rather different between the two. And that's in terms of the amount of navigation you have to do and the choice, and the complexity is going up. Finally, then, we have TVs that are relatively immature as a category at the moment. We're seeing a lot of new products being launched this year, and they have the whole internet available to them. So they have a browser, and when you get the internet, of course, you get huge choice. You get almost infinite choice. At the same time, you have to deal with the problem of the variability, and that means that as a consumer, you have a very variable experience in terms of the quality of what you watch and the quality of the experience. And because of that complexity, it's very, very different in terms of using it. You have to be able to do things like click and drag, and therefore it becomes hard to use, and you're very, very much going to be captive on how good that remote control or human interface is. And because you have a huge navigation task, then it's a big behavior change. This is nothing like TV as we've known it in the past. There's also another difference between these three kinds of TVs, and that is actually in the nature of the services and who controls them. So these simple ones at the bottom are controlled by the broadcaster and the service provider. They are independent of the brand. HBB TV means that if you watch ARD's HBB service, it will be the same regardless of the brand of TV you watch it on. This one, it's very dependent on the brands, and the experience will vary with the brand. And if the brand wants to switch off a function, they can do. If the brand wants to change it, they can do. And we've seen the ability and power of these services in when you buy one of those TVs, you suddenly discover more things appear as the brand adds them to their portals. But you're in the hands of the brand. And finally, these ones are completely different in that everything is your problem. If it doesn't play back, it's your problem. If it's hard to use, it's your problem, because you're out of the control of the brand. Because obviously the brand can't control everything that's in the internet. They can estimate, they can work on it, but fundamentally it becomes your problem as a consumer. We have just started gathering data on TVs according to these three categories that I've just explained. This is our data from Q4. I noticed that it is somewhat different to the figures that Jürgen Boyne put up this morning, and what I would emphasize is that this is 1 quarter's worth of shipments into the trade, not what's being sold. And in particular, last year we had a lot of inventory overhang, so there was a big difference between shipment and retail sales in Europe. But what we can see is really very, very different categories by region in terms of the mix. However, all regions have a minimum of around about 25% of connected TVs being shipped. So already in all regions, okay, connected TV is an established category. Okay, there was a question from a gentleman from Ghana earlier on who said, well, what about Africa? Yes, in Africa and the Middle East, then we already see connected TV is established. What is also interesting is that in countries like the Middle East and Africa, then you see maybe very high adoption of 3G, and you shouldn't just look at fixed broadband as to what's driving this. So there is a leap already in emerging markets, and maybe that leap is leaving out fixed internet and moving directly to mobile internet in the same way that it happened in telephony. It jumped directly to mobile. What is also surprising is the difference in the number of ones that are consumer controlled, in particular in China. And the reason for that is that that's where the best content is. It's on the open internet, and it's from things like torrent sites. And you have to be able to enter a URL to find the torrent site that hasn't been shut down by the government that week. Okay? It follows the content. It's all about content. And Western Europe, then very clearly, we see very strong adoption, and that is, of course, that the broadcasters have done in general a fantastic job of making services that people want to watch, services that people really value, and those catch-up services are already extremely powerful. The other big surprise is the relatively low penetration in the United States, and this is a growing trend that we're seeing, that US consumers are really lagging in their adoption of high technology features. So 3D, LED backlights and connected TV are really lagging in the US. And that US consumers at the moment seem to be wanting very big TVs with very sparse featuring. So big, cheap, and they're hunting for value. And it'll be interesting to see whether that changes and is just a temporary thing, or really whether it's going back to what the US TV market was like maybe 15, 20 years ago. So this is one to watch. So I'd like now to talk a little bit about navigation and control, because as I've hinted in my earlier slide, then connected TV is difficult to use, and that solving the navigation and control problems is really part of the key to making connected TV experience something that people actually not just use once, but use every day. And if you looked at the product launches earlier this year and people's announcements, then it was very clear that there is a new race starting in TV, which is in human interfaces. And I think broadly that there are three kinds of human interface that people are developing in this arms race. They are all immature, and there is no perfect technology yet, and I think most set makers are aiming for a combination, because it's very hard to see what will resonate with consumers. And those are broadly speech recognition, where commands are recognized. The issue is, of course, that it's one thing to do speech recognition in, say, the United States, where there are and North America, where there are 3 languages, to when you come to Europe with, let's say, at least 40 languages. Every country has a minority language, and there's very strong regional accents. And so far, if you look at speech recognition, it can either do a few commands from lots of people, or lots of commands from one person when there's some kind of training and voice recognition. And how much you can get beyond that is going to be the question on speech recognition. And speech recognition is processor intensive, so this is also demanding quite costly hardware. The second one is gesture recognition. I think the advent of the Microsoft Kinect has been a good example of how people can use that. And it's a kind of 3D interface and takes controls from 2D to 3D by moving it in space. And really what it offers is touchless touchscreens. However, the question when you come to TV is, do consumers actually want to wave their arms around in front of the TV? Do they feel comfortable waving their arms around in the living room, or are they worried about spilling the drink of the person next to them? Or do you feel a bit strange waving your arms around on your own? So I think this one is a real behaviour one, and probably some countries people will adapt to it and feel very comfortable. and other countries people will feel somewhat nervous about it. And the final one is motion sensing, where you have something like an accelerometer-based remote control. I think its big advantage is that it's something that's pretty familiar, like a mouse. I don't think you're going to get away from an on-screen keyboard with such a device, which strikes me as just a little bit of a missed opportunity. And such remote controls are definitely more expensive. Although on all these ones, I think we've got to wait and see what the cost curves look like. However, I'd venture to say that there is also another option, and that is for the TV set maker to kidnap another device that's in the room. And as far as the TV price is concerned, this is quite attractive because this device is already there, and so it's kind of for free. And that's by co-opting either a tablet or a smartphone. And the big advantage is that the smartphone's also been subsidized by a mobile carrier. So this is an example that I took a photo of last year, where the TV, in this case actually for the demonstration it's a set-top box, gathers the program guide data, it sends it to the tablet, which has an app installed on it, and what you see on the tablet is identical to what you would see on the on-screen display on the TV. And you can then use that to navigate and explore and set record events and so on and so forth. And at the end of it, the app will send the command back to the TV to do it. So you're separating, at long last, navigation and interactive tasks from viewing. And certainly my wife would appreciate this, because she gets to watch the program and I can continue to fiddle around with the picture settings on the TV to my heart's content without interrupting the action. So I think that this is something that we need to watch extremely carefully. You can already see that TV set makers sense this, because almost every connected TV now has some kind of a partner app in Android and iOS. And it's something to watch very carefully as to how rapidly these develop. So, we've had a little bit of a look at how you can interact with a smart TV, but as you start interacting, what are you actually going to do with it? And if you go to China, then you can see one example, which is Android TVs. And certainly in Shenzhen, when I was standing in the market looking at some of the Android TVs, the salesman was telling me that I have 250,000 apps. And in fact, some of the TVs actually have a tablet circuit board inside them. But most of those apps are not suited to a TV. They need a touchscreen controller, and most apps are mobile. And so they'll tell you where your nearest restaurant is, and maps and things like that, which isn't really particularly suited to TV. So the TV-specific apps are somewhat immature. And what is very clear is that a smart TV is not just a 46-inch smartphone. You have to do something different with the apps. And so we've done some research on this, of what people actually use in terms of apps and the amount of time that they spend on those apps. And it turns out that, big surprise, the value proposition of TV is watching TV. Thank you. The top apps are video. It is long-form video. That's what people like using TVs for. They like slouching, they like long sessions where they don't interact very much, and it's passive entertainment. At the same time, some tasks are definitely done better on handhelds. And I think the danger is pushing consumers to do the wrong things on their TV. So, very clearly, the killer app of TV is TV. And that the use of apps to bring in video, to search, to find, to select, to add choice is definitely where the action appears to be. And here's one example, and we all know that the Netherlands is a hotbed of all forms of new TV innovation. I believe that Big Brother first came from the Netherlands, and I think that The Voice of Holland is an extremely interesting and very creative use of apps. So the apps are absolutely part of the foundation of the program. There are TV shows now being generated that exist that have no contestants. The contestants are consumers with apps on smartphones. That allows you to interact and be part of the show and be the show. Okay, this is where apps are going. It's in mobile, it will be in TV. So watch this one very carefully, in that not just increasing choice, but it's a sort of a completely different axis that the apps on the TV become part of the program experience. So maybe a few conclusions. You've probably seen lots of diagrams in the past 10 years which have the TV as the sun and the rest of the devices in the home orbiting around it and bathing in the warmth radiated from the TV. I think that world is kind of over now. And what we have is something that is more spontaneous and more disorganized and more chaotic. And it's decentralized with, if you want to say something's in the center, it's the network. So all devices talk to each other. Each one can control the other. Each one can be controlled by the other. It's a two-way traffic of data. It's a two-way traffic of video. So that, for example, you've recorded something and on your set-top box, and you want to watch it on your smartphone. Somebody rings the doorbell, you use the smartphone to control the TV, you answer the door, and then you catch up on the action while you walk to the kitchen to go and get another beer from the fridge. Okay, all these things, it's very chaotic, it's what consumers really do, it's very unstructured, but the value lies in solving that unstructured world that consumers really live in. So, what do I want from a smart TV experience? And I think there are three things. And the first one is about search, and it's about doing search in a way that isn't just my problem. And I think one example of this is an app called ZBox. It appears on iOS and also on Android, which really puts these social feeds together and actually allows you to do these kind of things where you can see what other people are watching and you can get extra information and you can control your TV. So the other thing that we need to bear in mind is that there is a convergence of the TV, the smartphone and the tablet, and that they can all do HD video and they can all talk to the internet, and they've all got very powerful CPUs in them and powerful graphics processors. So in a world where all the screens are equally capable, and the software is becoming common, what happens next? And I think what we will see is the convergence in functions. And that, of course, is one of the things that enables you to have that democratic, equal world with a network at the center. But at the same time, the TV market will be driven also by smartphone functionality, because that's the same IP inside it. So we have that Jaws moment, perhaps, where the smartphone comes after the TV, and there's quite a big difference in those market sizes. So it's something to watch extremely carefully, that there may be surprises as smartphone functions jump into TV. So in summary, what is the future of smart TV? Well, it's more TV, and it continues to fulfill that consumer need for a social, shared activity slouched in front of a large screen. Definitely there are new ways of delivering video. If you're a pay TV provider or a broadcaster, that is extremely worrying. Probably from the TV point of view, it's not so much. It's an opportunity for choice. Certainly there are new sharing opportunities, not just of TV sharing being with people in the room, but being with remote friends. And I think things like Skype video calling offer some interesting opportunities as to how you can extend that shared experience just beyond the four walls of your room. But the thing that really underpins all of smart TV and will determine smart TV's true success, and that success is in terms of the value, is that it has to be simple to use. We're making devices now that are far more complex in terms of the navigation requirements, and solving the simplicity of use and making that sharing effortless will be the key to the future of smart TV. Thank you.